This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So a video clip, and maybe I might even get to 2 video clips of people talking about DeShaun Watson on ESPN have emerged and have caught some interest. I was thinking about reacting to that Joy Taylor clip, but I already did that on sportsforcleveland.com. You can find that on their YouTube page. So I didn't want to reiterate a dead horse or keep beating a dead horse. I think everybody's gotten their clips off on that whole Joy Taylor thing. And honestly, I feel like I've done that video like 3 times because I've reacted to the other 2 Joy Taylor takes that she had about DeShaun in this whole situation earlier. And she really didn't say anything that different, right? So why continue to reiterate stuff? So this is something I heard on Get Up. I thought it was interesting. Let's listen and react and do this.
Expectation for DeShaun Watson this season in Cleveland?
Me personally, I know a lot of people are talking about DeShaun getting back to 2020 in the form that he was playing at the quarterback position. I just think that's a lot to ask. And I understand he got $230 million, and that's a lot of money, and it's guaranteed. But in 2020, DeShaun Watson was the #1 passer in the National Football League, also completing 70% of his passes, 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, and 440 yards plus rushing. I think if DeShaun Watson can get back to 75% of that, I think the Cleveland Browns will be sitting in a great spot from a team perspective, especially from an offensive perspective.
Okay, so let's just talk about what he said right there, right? And what he's saying is, or I think that's N'Keal Harry, he doesn't want to set the expectations too high for DeShaun. He's saying, hey, even if DeShaun doesn't get back to what he was in 2020 or 2019, if he just gets back to 75% of that, that will be enough quarterback for the Cleveland Browns to do everything that they need to do. Now, a serious question, because everybody seems to have different tiers or different expectations based on DeShaun's contract. And let me ask you guys this question. Let's say DeShaun Watson is 75% of what he used to be in 2020. But the Browns still win the Super Bowl. Doesn't matter. That's not as easy as a question to answer as you might think. Like, let's say he gets the 1 Super Bowl and doesn't do anything else, even close. Like, is the contract a waste? I think it'd be pretty hard to argue a Super Bowl would be a waste. But again, everybody has different expectations based on this contract. And what has kind of happened with DeShaun, because people don't like him, and they don't like him for good reason. Like, it's not like he just didn't do anything. He's been in the news for what he's been accused of, and people who believe what he's been accused of don't like him. Can't really blame him for that. And when you don't like somebody, you really start looking at their money, and they don't like that he got all that money either, right? So people are going to be real picky. The goalpost is probably going to move, right? If he wins the Super Bowl, I promise you that's not going to make everybody go, well, that $230 million contract was worth it. It's not going to be like that. What's going to happen is the goalposts are going to get moved. That DeShaun Watson's going to win that Super Bowl, and people are going to be like, you know what? You're really paying for, multiple Super Bowls with $230 million. That's unprecedented, and it should be unprecedented success. So let's say he wins 2 Super Bowls in a row. Okay, then people are going to say any year he doesn't win a Super Bowl is a failure, and the contract was a failure. People have already made up their conclusion before the facts have come out about, people have already made up their conclusion about this contract being a failure for both the Cleveland Browns and DeShaun Watson before the 5 years on the contract have already elapsed, right? Like, people have made that determination. And no matter what happens in that time period, people are going to try to make that determination correct, even when it's not. So that's just going to be what it's going to be. I don't think the $230 million matters that much because, oh, wow, a franchise quarterback got paid a ton of money. It happened to DeShaun Watson before. It's happened to a bunch of different quarterbacks before. I understand why people make it a big deal with DeShaun, but that doesn't make it any more right. You know what I mean? When we're talking about an objective football take.
Be a massive disappointment. If DeShaun Watson is 75% of what he was in 2020, this DeShaun Watson should absolutely get back to representing what he was in 2020. He's had a full offseason. They got a loaded roster in Cleveland. Offensive lines, one of the best in the NFL, Amari Cooper. They got tight ends galore, great run game. They trade for Elijah Moore. This defense, for us to expect.
Now, again, I think Dan's right here in the saying of DeShaun should look like DeShaun, right? It's been enough time. He has enough around him. He should look like DeShaun. After a certain point, right? I mean, week 1, week 2, if he's still shaking off some rust, whatever. But if we're talking about him being rusty in week 10, that's just a bigger problem. So I agree with Dan in that aspect of what he's saying. What I want to know more about is what is getting back to 2020? Like, are we talking about the bar is going to be he has to get this many passing yards? Because that might not be realistic given that he's in an offense with more weapons, like you mentioned. What does being back to 2020 look like? What is the bar? Where's the goalpost set on, okay, he looks like he's back in 2024? Like, where are we setting that landmark? Because there's no good place to set that landmark. Because if DeShaun Watson wins 5 games, you can say he's better than 2020. Some people are going to make that the landmark. If DeShaun Watson throws for more touchdowns, that's going to be the landmark. What if he throws for more interceptions, though? That might not be like there seems to be when you set it at he has to be at 2020, when you set that as the goal, that's so vague that there's so much wiggle room to get out of it. So what I would like for Dan Orlovsky, who is a really technical and intelligent analyst of the game, to do is set a more concrete flag post or goal post of what is success for DeShaun Watson. Like, I've done it on this channel where I'm like, hey, a successful year for DeShaun Watson looks like these stats. I put up those expectations on this video. Well, not on this video, but on this channel a while ago, just so y'all can know where I'm at. That's if he passes this bar, we're good. If he doesn't, it's concerning. But I haven't seen anybody else nationally be as thorough. So I'm just wondering.
Or to say that it's unrealistic to expect him to become one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL is, I don't think it's unfair at all. I mean, he was not good last year in his 6 games. Now, granted, small body of work in new football team. He 100% should be playing because I think he needs the reps and absolutely should get back to what he was in 2020. He's still an incredibly talented player.
By the way, he isn't playing tonight, which is what Dan is referring to. And
he should play.
That's a major jump.
You know what I just did?
Watson.
I just pulled
What's
out a
the major
calculator.
jump?
Well, what we've seen, the sample size
Okay, he's not going to play in a practice where they have joint practice. So I don't get that one.
that we've seen last year with DeShaun Watson.
Well, a
in the
preseason
6
game where they
games,
had joint
we're
practices
asking him
before.
to get back to 2020.
Well, Harry, he was an incredible player at Clemson.
Yes.
He was awesome early in his career as Houston, injured. He was awesome in 2020, and then he misses time away, 18 months or something like. Why is it unfair for us to expect he should be awesome again?
Okay, I think
I'm not expecting it.
Unfair is a big word. It's a harsh word in this. I'm just saying, like, for 2023, to say that DeShaun Watson is going to be the 2020 quarterback.
Did he not throw for 4,000 plus yards?
In that offense, I don't see it happening.
Okay, yeah, he tripping on that one. Again, I like that they introduced something a little bit more concrete. If 4,000 yards is getting back to 2020, yeah, DeShaun Watson should get there. I don't know what N'Keal Harry are, right? Maybe N'Keal is purposely out here trying to set the bar low because he's in the camp of I want to see DeShaun Watson be successful again. But that's too low of a bar. I'm sorry, if DeShaun Watson don't throw for 4,000 yards, it's probably he got to throw for more than 4,000 yards, like 4,200 yards. It's probably where I'm at. I mean, it's been done before. So that I think he's trying to set the bar too low there. I'll be honest.
We may lose Orlovsky. Listen, I just did a little math. I pulled up my calculator. 75% of 230 million is 172 million. He's not getting paid to be 75% of what he was. He's getting paid to be the best quarterback in the NFL. His contract set the entire league on its ear. Lamar Jackson almost left Baltimore over it. It had repercussions across the entire sport.
What repercussions did it have across the league? When people say that, what repercussions did his contract actually have? Because Lamar Jackson is still in Baltimore. Did not get that guarantee. Nobody got the level of guarantee that he had. So what are people actually saying? Because on one hand, you'll hear people say, the Cleveland Browns were crazy for doing that contract. Nobody else got that kind of money. It was a one-off kind of a deal. But then you'll hear Greeny turn around and be like, it had repercussions across the league. He has to be great because of the repercussions of that contract. And it's like, what repercussions? What repercussions? Who did this contract actually affect other than DeShaun Watson? You see what I mean? You see what I mean? Where there's no conversation that happens with DeShaun Watson and his contract that's subjective. It's just not. It's all subjective. Who cares? Like at this point, I'm so tired of talking about this man money. His money is not subsidized by the people. We are not paying taxes on his money. Like we're just not. His money is his money. I could care less. I understand that people think he's not the greatest person in the world and they're mad that he got a bunch of money. But if you're mad at that, then I got news for you. There's a ton of people with way more money to sign the checks of DeShaun Watson that are terrible people. Like, what are we doing here? What are we really doing here?
They paid him to be the best quarterback in football, which he's capable of being. Anything less than something close to that is a disappointment.
They paid him to be one of the better quarterbacks in football, right? And that's where I agree with Dan. I think Nikhil is setting the bar low here, but not the best quarterback in football. They didn't pay him to be bad. They paid him to have a chance at having a franchise quarterback. And it's kind of ignorant to act like you don't understand that quarterbacks get paid a ton of money, even if they just have the chance to be a franchise quarterback. I mean, we just saw Daniel Jones get a bunch of money and nobody even believes he's a franchise quarterback. They just believe there's a chance that he might.
Remember in 2020.
No, it's not a disappointment.
Oh,
because if he can get this team to the playoffs at 75%, how's that a disappointment?
Because you didn't sign him to take you to the playoffs. You signed him because you knew you had no chance without an absolute dude at quarterback.
But here's my thing. If they get to the play, if you get to the dance, you have a chance.
But you know what we're trying to say here. Like in 2020, I remember sitting on NFL Live and saying, there is one quarterback, or I said the only quarterback that I would take that was under 25 at that time, outside of Joe Burrow, was DeShaun Watson as a player on the field. It is absolutely fair for us to expect that he gets back into that conversation.
Why are you expecting less from him than you are from Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, the top quarterbacks in the NFL? That's who he is.
Because he hasn't played
That's
football
a fair
like
point.
Those other guys.
That's a fair point that Greeny brings up. And I understand Nikhil's point is DeShaun has not played a ton of football. And that was a fair argument last year. This year, it's not going to fly. Even if it is fair, it's not going to fly. Like we already used that card in 2022. So DeShaun doesn't have much room. And DeShaun knows this. He doesn't have much room to be out here and struggling. And honestly, he has kind of put it out there where he's like, hey, you know I got to be great this year. So I kind of agree with Greeny and Dan Orlovsky here, where I do think it's fair for us to have high expectations of DeShaun Watson. I do think it's fair for people to be disappointed if he plays at a subpar level this year, because he should be able to have success. He really should. There's everything around him. They've built this offense around him. There's room for struggle here and there. I'm not going to freak out every time he has a bad game. But if this looks closer to Baker Mayfield than it does elite quarterback, then we're going to be concerned. And I think that's fair. I think that is a 100% fair thing to do. So shout out to the Get Up crew. I thought this was one of the better conversations about DeShaun Watson that I've seen on national television, where they're just talking about what the expectations are for him on the football field. And look, the contract's going to get brought up. And I think if your point is he's paid like a top level quarterback, the expectations are that he should be a top level quarterback. As soon as the situation around him is reasonable, and the situation around DeShaun is reasonable. Is there some things he has to get over or hurdle over? Absolutely, right? You know, playing very little. This offense is still going to be a little new. Like there's obvious hurdles for him to get over, but the existence of hurdles should not lower your expectations for him, because the reason you get somebody like DeShaun Watson is because you believe he can clear those hurdles. And if he can't clear those hurdles, then what are we doing? So it is fair to have high expectations. You should have high expectations for DeShaun Watson. I think the front office has high expectations for DeShaun Watson. I think Jimmy Haslam has high expectations for DeShaun Watson. I think DeShaun Watson has high expectations for DeShaun Watson. I don't think it's fair to set the bar low on him, given that the Browns moved on from a quarterback that was producing 75% of his 2020 year to get him because they want more than that. So I don't think Nikhil's right here. I get where he's coming from. I get that he is trying to, in some way, kind of be protective of a player here. But nah, the expectations are going to be high on DeShaun, and they deserve to be high on DeShaun because he's supposed to be a franchise quarterback, right? And this isn't like Michael Vick, where he got back into the league on a minimum contract and became a franchise quarterback again. No, this is a team that still believes in him to be a franchise quarterback. So the expectations are the expectations. So it's up to DeShaun to deliver, and everybody involved and around him knows that. We'll see if he does.